Story 1. I'm a cybersecurity consultant for a large consulting firm, and I was brought in to conduct a pen test, authorized hacking to find vulnerabilities. I gained access to one of the employees' laptops, and he had linked his personal Dropbox account with hundreds of images of adult material inside. It was horrific, and it still makes me nauseous to this day. I reported it to my leadership in HR, and law enforcement was soon involved. The man is in prison now. In the aftermath, my firm was kind enough to put me in contact with a therapist that I spoke to briefly. Fortunately, I viewed the collection of images for an extremely short time. Just enough time for my brain to realize what they were, and then enough time to collect the technical evidence I could hand over to law enforcement. As I mentioned, the few images I did see still bother me when I think about them. Thankfully, though, the therapist and I agreed that the whole ordeal was over so quickly that it didn't cause too much lasting trauma. It is certainly something that comes up in my memory from time to time, but I'm very glad this was a one-off experience that didn't traumatize me more seriously. For my cyber friends or those interested in security, I want to mention a couple of things regarding the pen test. As some of you mentioned, it is not normal to have permission to access files. Before a pen test, my company works with a client to establish a statement of work and rules of engagement document that serves as a contract for what I'm allowed to do during my pen test versus what is off limits. For example, anything that degrades performance or causes damage to a system is almost always off limits. In most cases, you stop at finding a vulnerability and then write up the report. However, this client provided a list of specific employees to target with highly sensitive information in their possession, financial information, HR information, etc. As part of the client's company policy, personal files were not permitted to be stored in company-owned devices, so the client was within their legal right to access anything in the machine. They were tasked to not only find vulnerabilities, but also to use them to gain access to search for policy violations of these VIPs of the company. Primarily, we were searching for documents that contained sensitive information that were not properly classified or stored securely. Because he had his personal Dropbox linked to his file explorer, I didn't even need to log in. If I were accessing through a web browser, this would have immediately made clear that the Dropbox was a personal account. I would have stopped in my tracks right there and only reported that the employee violated company policy by having a personal account in the machine. However, there was nothing apparent about the Dropbox account in his file structure that would indicate that it wasn't a corporate Dropbox, so I opened it to immediately find the images in nested folders containing the material. This is where I halted, reported, and collected a few pieces of evidence to turn over to law enforcement. We work side by side with the FBI, Homeland Security, etc. pretty frequently, so we had contacts to report such things. Usually, these contacts are for reporting evidence of a breach of a critical infrastructure or government asset. In this case, we were reporting something much different. They investigated and found the evidence they needed to convict him. Thankfully, my company and the client both agreed that I was well within the rules of engagement, so there were no repercussions for me. Dang, that must have been a soul-crushing experience for this dude. Just glad justice was served and this dude is okay. Story 2. A former friend of mine has a son who is a bit creepy. It was creepy from the day he was born. His bright blue eyes would turn dark whenever he saw me. I thought she was photoshopping his pictures when I'd see them, because in the pictures his eyes were blue, but I'd only see them dark, almost black. He did a lot of things throughout his life that made me know I'd never want to be alone with him once he got old enough to hold a knife. Anyway, when he was in middle school, he refused to wear any pants other than sweatpants because he claimed jeans were uncomfortable. One day, the parents got called into school regarding their son. The teacher, the principal, and the superintendent were there. Their son had 3 times been caught fapping in class. He sat in the front of the classroom the first time the teacher thought something was happening. The kid had not left the classroom when the bell went off. Turns out he couldn't because of Chubby. The teacher realized it and said she would go to the back of the room and he could leave. The second time, she caught him with his hands down there, tried not to embarrass him, and left the room. The third time, she was over it. She called him out after the bell rang and the other students had left the room. She walked him to the office. He sat there until the parents and superintendent arrived. The parents were told their son could only return to school if he wore khakis or jeans to school. That was fine, but he refused. They ended up putting him in a private school where there was a strict dress code. They didn't play openly anymore. Story 3. I walked in on a black market plastic surgery. Hanging out with a buddy from middle school. It was shady about only staying in his room and entering through his back door and being quiet. We were leaving and I turned down the wrong hall to his kitchen and there was a doctor and assistants in scrubs. Tubes, machines, and plastic wrap everywhere. I was ushered out, screamed at, and told not to talk about it. This happened years ago while I was a freshman in college in Houston, Texas. I was visiting family and friends on weekend. He wanted me to follow him after he checked to see if his parents were around. He told me to follow him and ran, but I was sitting down across the room, so I got up and turned the corner to the kitchen, which connected to the living room, to leave through the front door. He wanted me to leave out the back door through his sister's room, but I didn't see him turn that way. He should have waited for me, lol. It was either a lipo or tummy tuck, I don't remember. He told me the doctor only did those and Botox, if I remember correctly. This was done in a low middle-class neighborhood, so not super ghetto. To me, it was not done in a clean environment, but who am I to judge? I texted him and he said the doctor got caught a few years ago for transporting medicines, Botox, antibiotics, and painkillers, and his parents haven't heard from him in a while. He apparently only did weight loss stuff and did discount diagnosis for the poor, told people if stuff was serious enough to get appointments and tests done. Story 4. At a previous company, one of the developers on my team was lent a USB drive by someone in finance who had a spreadsheet called restructuring on it. The developer in question looked at it and saw the entire development team was going to be laid off in about 6 months. They were all shocked Pikachu when the entire development team found out their jobs and quit the same month. I think I was the second to go, but apparently it was a crazy time for the last couple as they couldn't hire replacements for people they wanted to lay off anyway, but still needed work completing to actually make money. The company folded not long after. Luckily for that development team, the finance guy, either out of ineptitude or sheer mercy, leaked that file. Story 5. When I was a kid, I was playing hide and seek with my cousins at my grandma's house. I hid in the wicker laundry basket with the lid closed. This is awesome, I thought to myself as only a child discovering the greatest hiding place can feel. I could see through the small gaps in between the wicker. It was in my grandma's bathroom and 2 feet in front of the toilet. My grandma walked through the bathroom door not 30 seconds after I contorted myself and closed the lid above me. With my face pressed against the side of the hamper, my grandma walked in, sat down, and bombed that toilet. I couldn't avert my eyes, staying perfectly still so this awkward situation doesn't turn more awkward. The noises, the smell, my grandma's forbidden garden. I won the game, I lost my innocence. Story 6. When I was younger, I was at a friend's house sleeping over playing video games like Smash, Star Wars Squadrons, Banjo-Kazooie, Diddy Kong, and GoldenEye on the N64. We wanted a late-night snack and went downstairs to get some cookies, and we saw his mom with another man kissing. Wasn't sure if it got to the other point, on the lounge. My friend cried and said, "You're not my dad," because his dad, if memory serves me right, was away on a weekend of fishing or perhaps out for the night. Sadly, this was the last time I spoke with him because he had to move away with his father. Fortunately, I was able to somehow find him through LinkedIn and was able to catch up with him. He's starting his own family. Other than that, we never spoke about what happened that night. Story 7. I went to pay a ticket I got while driving with my headlights turned off. I walked into the courthouse office I was supposed to be in and looked through the glass to see the elected male sheriff giving the female magistrate a back and shoulder rub. They both went white when I knocked on the glass. The sheriff immediately stopped and walked to another room. The magistrate gave me the weirdest look and said, "I guess Christmas came early for you." She stamped the receipt and gave it to me for the voided ticket. Sometimes it pays to see something you're not supposed to see. Man, that magistrate hit the jackpot. A rubdown from the sheriff and a mysterious back scratch dude. Talk about office perks. If you're feeling lucky, why not treat that like button as your good luck charm and subscribe to my channel? I've got some tricks up my sleeve that might just work in your favor. Story 8. On Thanksgiving when I was a teen, my older and younger brother had both been arguing with my mom all day long. My older brother kept saying how much of a witch she was. I walked into her room that evening and saw her standing by her bed with a few pill bottles open, sitting on the nightstand, and her crying while holding a handful of pills. I didn't say anything. Just walked over, gave her a hug, and held her for like an hour. Eventually, she asked for me to let her go, walk to the bathroom, and throw the pills on the toilet. The next week, we found out that my stepdad had been fooling around with his boss while away for work and called my mom on Thanksgiving to tell her he wanted a divorce. My mom and I didn't talk about what happened for a few months. Eventually, when she opened up about it, she said it was the only reason she didn't take the pills and that I had saved her life. She passed away the week after our talk from an unrelated accident. It will have been 10 years since then in March. I still miss her every day. I've never told this story to anyone. Nobody in my family even knows. We'll probably delete it in a bit. Just felt like sharing. Story 9. I found a box of my friend's mom's adult toys and tapes. This was my freshman year of high school, and it just so happened that the mom and best friend were very close friends with my American history teacher. At some point, the mom was relieved of a VHS tape by an anonymous teen boy. The tape had several different encounters, the best being one with my school teacher. This was overwhelmingly a fan favorite. You see, this tape ended up at not one, but 2 major party houses at my school. The first was my best friend's, and I personally showed it to at least 30 people, so probably 100 saw it there. At least 2 hours of footage, and some was pretty legit. She was someone that I had known since I was a kid. My favorite part of it all is that it was still well known at the school that a tape existed with this teacher and a student's mom at least 6 years later because a girlfriend's little brother mentioned it and was thrilled to hear me confirm it. The cherry on top of it all is that the teacher knows everyone knows. My class for sure would sneakily make remarks about it, even using mom's name, and he heard most of them. I often wonder what became of that tape. I hope it had a good life because it got a lot of views and has almost certainly been watched to death. I get that this dude was young when he did that, but damn, it's just wrong. Story 10. I was in a club in Winnipeg and saw my meteorology professor getting a dance. Winnipeg is over 2 hours from the school I attend. My girlfriend was a meteorology major, so I had met his family at a school event. He asked me to please not tell his wife. She thought he was at a bowling tournament. Got an A despite putting in 0 effort. Story 11. My mom's old friend came over. She's a little crazy, but sweet too. She said I looked just like her daughter and then spent about 10 minutes scrolling through her camera roll with me to find a picture of her. In the process, I saw 2 to 3 private photos. She was a bit embarrassed, but just said, "I'm sure you've seen one before." Sorry. I assured her it was fine. Honestly, by the looks of the photos, I was more concerned for her. Story 12. This is my friend's story. Her parents were going through, or had just finalized a divorce. They really wanted everyone to get together again for Christmas, though, so they all met at her parents' house. She came in to visit with her husband and kids, her brother and his wife came in, and they all were staying in the same house. Her dad was going to sleep downstairs on the main floor in a spare bedroom, and the rest were crashing upstairs. Everyone had gone to bed for the night and things had calmed down. She said she woke up in the middle of the night and went to the bathroom, then decided to walk downstairs for a drink of water. As she got to the bottom of the stairs, she heard a banging sound and went to check on it. She ended up walking on her mom fooling around with her dad. Story 13. I saw one really weird message and then got sucked into reading a whole huge text chain of my dad's really disgusting private text messages with his girlfriend wherein he refers to her by the same very specific and highly personalized nickname that he has referred to me as since I was a child. It was like a train wreck. I couldn't look away. The messages had a really strong fixation vibe as well, and I've never recovered. It seems he refers to her by nickname whenever they are being intimate or romantic. Said nickname isn't some common thing like baby girl. It's a reference to a misprint on my soccer jersey from middle school. It's incredibly specific. Sounds a lot like my actual first name, and to make matters weirder, this girlfriend of his had heard him refer to me by that nickname probably hundreds of times, so he can't be lost on her. Also sounds nothing even close to her own name. I have racked my brain a million times about it to try and make myself feel even slightly less grossed out, but I only ever feel more upset. I have no idea why else using that nickname for their private matters would even be a thing, so I'm traumatized and haven't looked at my dad the same way since, but surely don't want to ask him about it. I haven't told anyone in my life about this because what would you even do about that? It's the only thing I haven't told my fiancé about because I think he might actually do something about it if he knew. For context, my dad asked me to get his iPad connected to the Wi-Fi and set up all his media on it. While I was doing this, he started getting bombarded with notifications of texts from his girlfriend. A glance at the banner for one text in particular made me go, "Wait, what? It can't be that." Once I started reading, my fears were confirmed. I read several of their conversations from over 2 years, skimmed over a lot and read some things specifically, trying to rationalize that I was mistaken and wasn't seeing what I was seeing. I couldn't look away. Felt like I had to keep reading to try to find some explanation or to make it less real. In all honesty, I do not feel bad about violating his privacy given the circumstances. Story 14. My childhood best friend found her stepmom's diary a few years back. Her mother passed away almost 15 years ago. She read through it out of curiosity and found pages and pages of her stepmom wishing she and her brother would have perished with her mother, saying that they were the worst kids ever and that she was glad their mother was gone because she deserved it, etc. She even showed me one day when I was at their place. It made me sick. Never looked at her stepmom the same after that. To clear things up, this woman is pure evil to their faces too. Anytime stepmom starts an argument with my friend's dad over the most ridiculous things, as if she's just trying to start something, she always goes straight to trash-talking the kids loud enough for everybody in the house to hear. If I recall correctly, she actually put her hands on both my friend and her brother. This is my friend's house legally. Her mom gave it to her in her will. She very easily could kick her out, but she's scared of what will happen to her dad. She knows it will cause even more trouble. He doesn't know about what's in the diary because we've always been scared to bring it up. Her brother has long moved out. Man, what is up with these evil stepmoms? What a nightmare. Story 15. I'm a medical student and had the privilege of doing practice in a rural area outside the city. The university offered a transport bus to take you to the different hospitals in case transport was an issue. I used to sit in the first row behind the bus driver so I could look at the road, to avoid the motion sickness that I get on road trips. One morning when we were about to depart, the bus driver climbed inside the vehicle, and when he was about to take a seat, someone came inside the bus and attacked him with what I believe was a big revolver. He passed away on the spot. On a selfish note, I'm glad the perpetrator was wearing a motorcycle helmet and I couldn't see his face, because I swear that after he was done, he looked right at me, and for a second contemplated the idea of getting rid of the witness. I was afraid of coming to my university for the rest of the year, and someday be next. R.I.P. Mr. Bayron. You were the quickest and coolest bus driver I met, even when that really made me dizzy. Story 16. When I was a kid, my mom and I went to visit an aunt and uncle because my uncle, my mom's brother, had just had major surgery. During the visit, my aunt and my mom cooked a huge dinner, and my aunt told me to go call for my cousin to have dinner. I went to his room and opened the door to be greeted by the sight of weapons lining the bed, and I vividly remember seeing bricks of what I later learned were snow in a big burlap sack of grass. I blurted out, "Your mom said come eat." It immediately slammed the door shut. It was no secret to anyone in our family the type of business that our cousins were in. He came out of his room a few minutes later and scolded me for not knocking. I was scared, but the young kid brain in me was also extremely fascinated to see that they were real-life kingpins. Story 17. My wife's stepmom dated a guy who shared my name. She sent her private photos to the wrong contact. She was around 60 at the time. I deleted it and took the opportunity to get off the couch and down to the cell phone shop for a new phone and a new number. I then texted all of my contacts saying I'd gotten a new number and may have missed anything they sent in the last 4 hours. I created a perfect excuse for us never to speak of even the possibility of something so wrong, but I still haven't forgotten it. Story 18. A few years ago, a cousin of a female friend got back from Afghanistan, recently discharged. Let's call my friend Lucy and her cousin Mike. Didn't know Mike well, but Lucy and Mike were fairly close. We were using Skype to play Magic the Gathering with him at a distance, usually about 5 or 6 of us in person. We're in California, Mike's in Alabama. Lucy wanted to include him in the fun we'd have after classes and such, so we were trying to figure out a distance solution to include him. Mike seemed like a nice enough guy. Anyhow, we're midway through a game when Mike says into the camera, "I'm gonna get another beer, be right back." We're still rotating turns, so it's all good. The laptop is angled in such a way that it's directly facing Lucy, and I can see it at a slight angle from the right, and another friend, Nina, beside Lucy, is participating on her left. A couple of minutes pass, and we figure he's using the restroom or whatnot. No big deal. The next part I remember almost in slow motion. It's surreal. Everyone's laughing and socializing while this is happening, and Mike comes back and sits down, and I get this weird feeling this deep pit opens in my stomach and my skin feels overly sensitive. A friend across the table looks concerned and says something like, "You okay?" Because I stopped talking suddenly and must have gone pale. I didn't answer. I was watching the laptop. Mike's hiding his hands and I don't see any beer. Nina said, "Hey, Mike's back." And everyone started picking up their cards. Mike says something to the effect of, "Just a sec, I want to show you guys something." He pulls out a pistol and does a sort of salute movement with it, then ends everything. Cue chaos, screaming, vomiting, ugly crying, frantic phone calls, and a terrible night. Part of me is really sad for Mike, but the greater part of me wants to tell him to go to hell for traumatizing 2 friends of mine. One severely and subjecting me to it in the process. Hurt his cousin on purpose as the last act, as suddenly and brutally as possible. Damn you, Mike, but rest in peace. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy. What's your "we will never speak of this again" moment? Story 4 will make you grip your sides from laughing. See you on that video.